What's going on, guys? Welcome to another edition of Recher Reacts. I am Jay Recher here with you, and I promise I won't post any videos from the WWE tonight like I did in my debut episode last night that got me kicked off of Facebook, kicked off of YouTube, but hopefully my listeners, my viewers that checked me out on Twitter last night enjoyed it because I didn't get taken down from there quite yet. Follow me on all social media platforms: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube at JRetro. Make sure you share this on all of your social medias. If you can, like and subscribe as well on YouTube. Plenty to get into today. We're going to talk a little Rays, talk a little Bucks, some Olympics as well, and then one segment I like to call One Last Thought. And we're going to take a look. And last night we did it on Freddie Freeman and his son Max and how he was able to bounce back and show incredible resiliency. Having Guille, Guille Barre, I still can't say it, but GBS, he had his terrible sickness, but for him to be able to come back, just really, really cool stuff there. So we have a little bit something different. And also the Andre Vasilevsky of field hockey. And what the great thing about watching the Olympics is to see some of the sports that you don't really watch all the time. And field hockey is one of them that I've really gotten into. So I know, surprise, it's hockey, but field hockey just completely different. I still don't know all the rules, but it was a lot of fun. So we're going to talk about that as well. So we'll start off talking about our Tampa Bay Rays. They lose 4-3 in St. Louis against the Cardinals. They show a lot of resiliency at the end of the game, almost coming back. Like, how good, if you just watch that game, how good is that guy Helsley? Coming out of the gates throwing 101. That dude is legit. And the Rays put two runners on. But it's just another example of Tampa Bay not being able to do the little things. That's one of their big problems this year, not being able to move runners. You got runners on first and second base, nobody out, and Jose Caballero comes up. He squares around the butt the first time, doesn't get it down. And then this weird little check swing thing. I don't know what the hell that was. Goldschmidt makes the play in foul territory. Wortved comes up and strikes out. Listen, they gave it a good effort there. DeLuca keeps the game alive with a hit down the left field line, but unfortunately, Taylor Walls hits the ball hard up the middle, goes off of Helsley's backside. Wind comes up, makes a nice play, fires it across the diamond for out number 3. Rays lose 4-3 in the first game of this series against the St. Louis Cardinals there. Yeah, I mean, some positives from this game when you look at Brandon Lau giving the Rays the lead in the first inning with a 2-run shot. Good to see that. Also, Jeffrey Springs, not a fantastic outing, but listen, he went through 5 innings, gave up 6 hits, 4 runs. Still don't want to see 3 walks, but 3 strikeouts. That is a good sign as well. So Jeffrey Springs slowly working his way back. And it's not so much about this year for Jeffrey Springs, it's about next year and him being healthy and getting these innings under his belt. This is kind of the tail of the Rays season. Lose a close game here. They're probably going to win the rest of the games in this series. But they'll still be probably 4 or 5 games back. But shout out to the Rays for fighting, for grinding. It just seems like this has been kind of the microcosm of them all year long. Just not enough. Can't come up with the big hit when they desperately need it. Real quick, before we start talking about some Buccaneer football, I want to give a shout out to my guy, Chenzo Scagno, longtime Tampa baseball guy, Scagno family, Vince and Yvette, his parents. Got a lot of love for the Scagno fam. Hit Factory family, Tampa Catholic family. He was officially named the head coach of the Steinbrenner baseball team. So shout out to Chenzo Scagno, a great dude, and excited to see what he's going to do, taking over for an absolute legend in John Crumley, who was the only coach for Steinbrenner after a long career at Jesuit. Really cool to see it kind of stay like in the Team Tampa Bay family. So congratulations to Chenzo, and excited to see what you're going to do over there at Steinbrenner. All right, let's talk some Buccaneer football. And I'm rocking my Tom Brady. I mean, man, what an incredible ride that 3 years was with Tom Brady here as the Buccaneers quarterback. But one of the big things that came out of the NFL world today, and we played it on our show. If you missed it, it's up on our page, jnz.com, was the interview on the Pivot with Devin White. And we had one of the hosts of the Pivot on Jay and Zach a couple of weeks ago, Channing Crowder. Shout out to Channing. Ryan Clark, one of the other hosts, as well as running back Fred Taylor. 3 great careers for those guys. And Devin White came on to their podcast and gave his side of the story. about what happened with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and how his tenure ended here in Tampa Bay. And we played a lot of it. We played not the entire interview, but we played that kind of that 7 or 8 minute clip of Devin talking about Tampa Bay. And when you're looking at a guy like Devin White, and this is probably one of the more positive photos, even though it doesn't look it. But Devin White, when he first came onto the scene as the number 5 overall pick with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he was a guy that had just incredible talent. And you looked at this guy going, damn, he could be a defensive player of the year if he keeps up this type of play. Helps the Buccaneers win their second Super Bowl championship in franchise history back in 2020. He was beloved by people in the Tampa Bay area. Remember riding his horse there at Raymond James Stadium, the site of the Super Bowl that season where they beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And it seemed like Devin White could do no wrong. But then, as the years go by, it seemed like he was getting some bad advice. And also, his play was dipping. From year 2 to year 3 to year 4, the total tackles just steadily declined. And then there was that big incident there in year 4. You remember that night game at Raymond James Stadium against the Baltimore Ravens, where clearly on tape, there was issues with his effort. And it didn't seem like he was going hard. And this isn't something that was an opinion from writers and radio hosts that have never played the game. You're talking about a video on Instagram from the one and only Warren Sapp, one of the best defensive players in the history of the NFL. A guy, whether you agree or disagree with the things that he's done off the field, he's always been great to me. You cannot deny the type of football player he was. He was a bad dude, one of the best to ever do it. And he called out Devin White for a lack of effort. Not good enough. Not good enough for a guy, and you see it in the picture there, that had a C on his chest for the captaincy. And then a couple of days later in the Buccaneers locker room, he stood up there, and to his credit, he answered questions and said it wasn't good enough. His words, not ours. But right then and there, that was kind of a seminal moment when it came to Devin White and his time with the Bucs. Was that going to be an isolated incident? Was that going to be just something that we looked at and said, hey, man, he was a young guy. He learned from it, and he just went back to being the Devin of old, a guy that was able to help this Buccaneers team win the Super Bowl. But unfortunately for him, that was kind of the beginning of the end. He goes into the offseason. He wants this big deal. He's seeing what some of these other linebackers are getting paid. He's looking at the Roquan Smiths of the world. He's looking at the Fred Warners of the world. He wants to get paid like those guys. And unfortunately for him, the Buccaneers did not agree that he should be paid like some of those other guys. And they wanted him to play on that 5th year of his rookie deal. So what Devin White tells us in this conversation with Channing and Fred and Ryan was that to try to force the Bucs' hand, he demands a trade. So you don't like what your contract is, so you demand a trade. How did that work out? Newsflash, not so well. He only got a 1-year deal with the Philadelphia Eagles. And again, that was the beginning of the end for Devin White's time in Tampa Bay. You look at the way he carried himself, look at the way that he handled those negotiations. Not good. Not good. And it blew up in his face. And the Bucs, especially when you look at the examples set before him, you look at the way that Levante David carries himself. You look at the way that Mike Evans carries himself in contract negotiations. You see Tristan Wirfs, just look at what he was doing in training camp. Before he signed that deal, Tristan Wirfs is out there with his guys. Antoine Winfield Jr., he got tagged, got the bag. There's a track record of the Buccaneers paying these guys. Maybe not back in the Derek Brooks days, because I know some people might bring that up, but with Jason Light and his crew, with Mike Greenberg and the entire, I almost say family over there at the front office, they find a way. If you've earned it, I don't like the deserve word. You guys know that. If you earn that contract, you're going to get paid. Oh, they'll find a way to make it happen. But instead, Devin wants to demand a trade. Devin wants to go on social media and show his love and affinity for the Philadelphia Eagles. Like that wasn't a foreshadowing of things to come. And it's just sad because you could tell he got bad advice. You could tell the guy's got, I mean, we've seen he's got all the talent in the world. But Devin White did not play his cards right. And now he's no longer with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's not. And what do you see at the end of last year? He comes back. He says he's banged up. He says that when Gardner Minshew cut back, he was so banged up that he wasn't able to uh, change direction and keep up with them. I'm sorry, Devin. I don't know if I'm buying that either. One of the things you ran sideline to sideline like a bat out of hell. I give you a lot of credit for that. But there were times where you over pursued. So let's not act like that's the first time that we've seen you do that. And we saw at the end of last year, okay, you may not have been 100%, but KJ Britt was a better option than you were. And I wanted to kind of look at this as the middle linebacker of old and the middle linebacker that is going to be playing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year, and that's KJ Britt. And I've been going to training camp pretty much every day. 10 days at training camp. The only day I missed was last Tuesday night, the outdoor practice or the indoor practice, and that was because we were at the Rays game as part of our summer nights giveaway with Zach Blondner and took the family out there. But I've been at every other training camp practice so far this preseason. And I was out there today and with our good buddy Greg Allman from Fox Sports. And I don't know if you guys know this. I don't know if you guys recognize this. If you've been out to camp, if you've been out to practice at all. After the Buccaneers do their preliminary stretches, after everybody's kind of stretching on their own, they come back to the middle field there and they do their jogging and they do their stretching. But after that wraps up, there's one player that starts clapping it up and brings everybody in every single day. It's not Vita Vea. It's not Levante David. It's not Antoine Winfield Jr. It's not Tristan Wirfs. It's not Baker Mayfield. It's not Mike Evans. It's not Chris Godwin. It's this man on the screen with me right now, KJ Britt. And to see a guy that has gone from to see him, a guy that was gone from a backup to now thrust into the middle linebacker role. This dude is a leader. This is a guy that you want to rally around. Let's not forget, back in 2019, he was all SEC first team defense out of Auburn. And he missed all but 2 games his senior year back in 2020 with a busted up thumb, or else he probably would have got drafted higher. This guy is a leader. It screams, it pours out of his pores. I got a chance to interview him one-on-one, and you can tell there is a confidence with this man that he is comfortable being in the middle of this Buccaneers defense. Everything could be going crazy around him. He is ready to go. And you just look at the difference between these two guys. Devin White, all the athleticism in the world. I give him all the credit for what he was able to do early in his tenure with the Bucs, helping this team win a Super Bowl. But this is the type of guy that I would rock with. KJ Britt is the type of linebacker I want on my team. He may have not been drafted number 5 overall, but this is a guy with a chip on his shoulder. This is a guy with something to prove. And this is a guy that's not going to take a play off. So when I look at Devin White and I look at KJ Britt, yeah, when you look at the draft status, you may think from an untrained eye and not knowing the situation that the Buccaneers have made a downgrade at the middle linebacker position. But if you've been paying attention, you can tell that KJ Britt in this defense in 2024, a clear upgrade. And I think this Buccaneers defense is really going to scare some people. And I think it's going to surprise some people too. Not enough credit is given to this Buccaneers defense. There's a lot of good players. But when you have a stud middle linebacker like KJ Britt, listen, watch out. Because I think you're going to see 5'2" flying all over the field. And he's going to be the guy that's going to be leading this team in tackles. He's already doing it with his leadership. He's doing it with his voice in training camp. He's going to do it with his play in the regular season. Excited to see KJ Britt and this Buccaneers defense. Questions, comments, concerns, leave a comment there, whether you're watching on Facebook, whether you're watching on YouTube or Twitter. We got about 80 on Twitter right now, so check us out and leave a comment there down below. Wanted to switch gears a little bit. Wanted to talk a little Olympics. And man, just some incredible things that we've seen so far today with some world record holders. And the job of Cole Hawker winning the 1500. I mean, this dude was not the favorite. and he came back at the very end to win gold. Incredible job by Cole Hawker, a new Olympic record. But let's shout out Gabby Thomas, dominating the women's 200 meters. And we all looked at a couple of days ago, Noah Lyles winning the 100 meters and how it was a photo finish and nobody knew who won. That wasn't really the case for the 200 meters on the female side. Gabby was incredible. She won a gold. She won a bronze 3 years ago in Tokyo, and then just to see the look on her face, pure jubilation, winning the gold there in Paris. So shout out to Cole Hawker, shout out to Gabby Thomas as well. But I want to focus on one guy when it comes to USA basketball. And no, it's not LeBron James, and no, it's not Steph Curry, and no, it's not really any of the players on the team. It's actually head coach Steve Kerr. And once again, the men did their thing, and they come out, and I know they were a little concerned about Brazil, even though they were 1-2 going into that quarterfinal game today. But the United States blow them out 122-87, a 35-point victory where Joel Embiid, even though he's taking heat from the French crowd there, I'm sure they want him on their team, but USA came out and just dominated. And early on in the Olympics, we saw a lot of talking heads and Stephen A. Smith, who, listen, I think he's just extremely talented, a wordsmith, a guy that really has set the foundation when it comes to sports talk on TV. He may not be your thing, I get it, but that guy, you gotta respect his gangster. I mean, the guy, we got an opportunity to meet him this year and talk to him at the Barrett Sports Media Conference. And I took a lot of great notes from him. And hopefully I'm taking some of those things that he has done and kind of incorporating that into my game a little bit. But I was taken aback when Stephen A. Smith got on Steve Kerr when he didn't play Jason Tatum in that first game. Now, when you look at a team like the USA men's basketball team, this is unlike any other team you're going to coach. There is mistakes that are going to be made. And when you look at a game that, listen, they're used to playing 48 minutes, it's only 40. And when you're focused on certain rotations and getting certain guys involved, sometimes you make miscalculations. But to act like it's personal, to act like he's not going to fix it, I thought was just a big time overreaction. You're talking about one of the most successful guys in NBA history. And I say guys, not because of a lack of a better word, but because he was successful as a player, he was successful as an executive, and now he's successful as a coach. And you remember the big shots that he hit for the Chicago Bulls. You remember him as a member of those San Antonio Spurs teams. And you remember him as the head coach of the Golden State Warriors, the best team that we've seen in basketball over the last 2 decades. But I ask you, what did you see from Steve Kerr's Golden State teams? You saw a lot of jump shooting. You saw arguably the best shooting back. I don't know if it's arguable, but the best shooting backcourt of all time was Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. He was able to unlock that. He was able to play a system where he accentuated the strengths of a guy like Draymond Green. He brought Kevin Durant. He won before Kevin Durant, during Kevin Durant, and after Kevin Durant. He was able to get the most out of guys like Andre Iguodala and guys like Kevon Looney. Um, what more can you say? And it's not just that they just chuck up a bunch of threes and they don't get back. They don't play defense. These guys share the ball. They're enjoyable as hell to watch. This is a guy that's found a way. And look at it now. Look at a team in Brazil, and they blew them out. They're still the heavy favorites. But I thought it was just a big-time miscalculation and overreaction to Steve Kerr and how he handled some of this roster in the beginning. These guys don't practice a ton. They needed some time off after a long NBA season. This is not easy for a guy that is used to coaching a team it's a marathon, and then you have these of a regular season, and then you have the playoffs. This is a sprint. You got to figure this type of thing out on the fly. And then, Kawhi Leonard, who was part of this team, he's gone, and you bring Derek White in. So you want to incorporate him in as well after his successful run in the postseason, helping the Celtics win a championship. You got him. You got Holiday. You got Tatum. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be perfect. So I think at times when we're looking at certain guys, especially when they're having success, pump the brakes a little bit. It's not personal. We don't got to look at Steve Kerr and think he's like the worst coach in the world because he's one of the best coaches to ever do it. One of the smartest basketball minds that we've seen. Yeah, okay, it took a little while. But if you're telling me that after one game, he deserved the lashing that he was getting from a lot of the media out there when it comes to, not playing Jason Tatum, how dare he? It's not like they lost. He's in there now. He's in the picture right here. He's found a way. And I'd be very surprised if they don't win the gold easily. So before we start judging guys, it's one thing when you judge a coach or a player over 82 games or 162 games or playoff failures or lack of adjustments, but something like this that is so unique that happens once every 4 years with such an incredibly talented roster. Just the fact that he didn't get it right away, pump the brakes a little bit, chill out. USA advanced to the semifinals, and again, I'd be very surprised if they don't take it home. Before we move on to one last thought, I wanted to highlight a guy that you may not have ever heard of before. And I love the Olympics. I love the national pride. I love that there's so many different things that break us apart. There's so many different things that divide us in this country. But one thing like the Olympics brings us all together. Different backgrounds. It doesn't matter. We're all cheering for the red, white, and blue. And I don't think that's corny. I know some people look at it like, oh, it's corny. You support your country. All right, that's fine. Nobody's perfect. No country's perfect. Even us, the world power, the team that leads the medal count pretty much in every Olympics. We have faults. Okay. I'm not going to not be proud of our country. I mean, the good and the bad. Are there things that need to change? Yes. Again, is it perfect? No. But during situations like this where people train their whole lives, I'm sporting the red, white, and blue, and I'm not going to be ashamed of it. Not one bit. Not one bit. Because the Simone Biles and the Katie Ledeckis of the world and the Noah Lyles of the world, yeah, supporting them big time. But even outside of your national pride and seeing all the different athletes that we have out there doing their thing, I love finding athletes and finding teams outside of the U.S. to cheer and support for. And one guy that I found was this man right here, PR Srizesh. Okay. Now, when you look at my guy PR, all right, he is the goalie for the Indian field hockey team, Paratu Ravindran Srijesh. And at 36 years old, he just played in his final game for the Indian national team as they lost 3-2 in a heartbreaking game in the semifinals to Germany. But this guy has been widely regarded as the world's best goalkeeper of his generation. I mean, this guy, and you just look it up. It's just so cool to be able to see. You're talking about a World Games Athlete of the Year. He won the Kel Ratna Award in 2021, the highest sporting honor of India. He's 36 years old. PR Srizesh. Yeah, it's random, right? It's random. You never know who you're going to start following, who you're going to start supporting. But you're looking at a guy, and he does it with such flair and dramatic. They pull the goalie in the game against Germany, just like you see in the NHL, and he is out there on the sideline screaming to his team, trying to encourage them to pick up the equalizer. The big wall, Superman. He's got so many different nicknames, but a big shout out to PR Srizesh. And enjoy your retirement, man. Age 36, still doing his thing. He's going to be playing in the bronze medal game, of course, for India. I think they take on Spain, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, shout out to PR. Cool name too. And I call him the Andre Vasilevsky of field hockey. And if you see this picture, if you get an opportunity, this is from the shootout in the quarterfinals against Great Britain. If you can, go on YouTube, look up the highlights of that game. India, Great Britain, quarterfinals, the 2024 Paris Olympics, PR Srizesh, and I think it was the first or the second save he made. He goes down in this position, and then he's like hopping up and down. Hilarious. My girlfriend looked at it, it's like, what is he doing? It's so funny. But shout out to my guy PR. Hell of a career. He's got one game left. Hopefully they can bring home the bronze in his swan song with India. Okay, one last thing here on Recher Reacts. And of course, we always want to hear from you. Again, leave those comments. And this is going to take a little while for everybody to kind of get used to me being on social media or on Facebook Live and YouTube Live and Twitter. But definitely going to try to do this more often than not to talk about everything that has happened that day in sports. But I want to end this show with one last thing. And the one last thing caught my eye, and that was earlier today when Malik Neighbors of the New York Giants got into a scrap with members of the Detroit Lions. And you start looking at this, and it's between him and Kirby Joseph, excuse me. And these guys are going back and forth. And there are people out there that look at fighting in football and they think that there's no place for it. And they think, why can't these guys be more mature? This is a sign of immaturity. A guy like Malik Neighbors has no respect for the game, this and that. But if you talk to a lot of guys and you talk to a lot of current and former, maybe not current players, maybe they're not going to say it. But if you talk to a lot of former players, and I think if you talk privately to certain coaches, this is an inevitability. This is not something that is surprising. When these guys are practicing day in, day out, especially some of these dudes practicing in the heat, just think of the guys practicing in Tampa Bay. When you get to training camp day 10, it's monotonous. You're going against the same guys every day, and tempers do flare. Tempers do flare. And these guys, especially in these joint practices, things like this are going to happen. I don't look at a situation like this and think, oh my goodness, this is the downfall of football. This is a sign of immaturity. Just look at the two teams involved here. The New York Football Giants under Brian Daboll. Okay, 2 years ago, they did great. Get to the playoffs. Daboll's the coach of the year. They win a playoff game in Minnesota before losing. Last year, really, I wouldn't even say an up and down year, more of a down year. I mean, hell, they picked 6 to pick Malik Neighbors, but injuries and just poor play. They get rid of the DC. They bring in a couple of new guys as well. All right, so you could say, all right, well, maybe the Giants are being a little immature, but you look at the Detroit Lions. This is a team that's on the rise. There are some people thinking that if it's not San Francisco, they're the best team in the NFC. Dan Campbell, a guy that is he's a player's coach. He loves the passion and the energy that his team has. Do I look at them as an immature team? Last year proved that they're not so. And you'll say, all right, well, it's between these two teams. Well, just look back at training camp so far this year. You know, one of the first teams to get into kind of a little bit of a tiff and some back and forth, it was a team that won the Super Bowl last year, the Kansas City Chiefs. Go look it up. These type of things happen. And if you're a person that wants more personality and you love the jawing back and forth, hell, we were at training camp today and the cornerbacks and the wide receivers, they were jawing at each other. And I had one Buccaneer fan look at me and say, I love that. That is one of my favorite parts of the game. And I just looked at him and said, yeah, man, they're out here balling out. They're having fun. It was Zion McCollum after he picked off Baker Mayfield in the end zone on a pass intended for Mike Evans and took it 100 yards back the other way for a pick six. And he's still running his mouth. Antoine Winfield Jr. is still running his mouth, talking smack to the offense. It's the name of the game. But when that happens, emotions are high. Sometimes guys feel they're getting their feelings a little bit. They're hot. They're bothered. They're sick of preseason. These guys are emotional players. They're physical players. You put all of these things into the pot. Combustibility is at a high. So I'm not surprised by this whatsoever. I don't think this is a foreshadowing of some kind of downfall of the National Football League. You see this every single year. You've seen it with the Bucs. Hell, years ago, I remember it like it was yesterday. Two of the nicest guys that we ever met in the Buccaneers locker room, Gerald McCoy and Ali Marpet, were going at it. Think about that. Gerald McCoy, for not a lot of Buck fans, but there's a certain sect of Buck fans out there that didn't like Gerald because he was too nice, because he picked people up off the ground. Ali Marpet, yeah, he was tough as hell, but he was a nice dude. He was a good dude. Those two guys went out in practice. So if you're telling me that Gerald McCoy and Ali Marpet, that was immaturity, no, it wasn't. It was competition. It's hot. It's camp. These guys are competing. They want to be the best. I don't care if it's the Bucs. I don't care if it's the Chiefs. I don't care if it's the Giants and the Lions. These fights in training camp, they're not going anywhere. And they mean absolutely nothing. This does not correlate to anything. So you may want to look at this and say that Malik Neighbors needs to grow up and Detroit should know better and walk away. Daniel Jones was in the middle of this scrap today. It happens. These are physical, emotional athletes in the middle of training camp that they're waiting for the regular season to start. Let's not make a big deal of these training camp fights because you know what's going to happen next week. You're going to forget all about them. All right, make sure you follow them. Follow me on all social media platforms at Recher, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Appreciate everybody for tuning in tonight. Make sure you lock into Jay and Zach tomorrow at noon on WDAE. A big day tomorrow as we broadcast live for the final time at Buccaneers training camp. I know my guys, Pat and Aaron, are going to be on from 8 to 12. Nick Wise and Chris Mathis preceding them from 6 to 8. But pretty sure Todd Bowles, Buccaneers head coach, is going to be joining Pat and Aaron live after his press conference there at the Advent Health Training Center at One Buccaneer Place. I'll, of course, have my Recher's Rapid Reaction. I'm trying to get one player for my training camp minute. I tried to get Jake Camarda today. Didn't work out because he was lifting weights after camp. So that was that was unfortunate. So I just had to go back to the studio without a training camp minute guy today. So hopefully I'll be able to bring somebody in. Tomorrow is chock full of Gregs on Jay and Zach. We've got Greg Wolf. We've got Greg Allman. We're trying to get a couple of other Gregs involved on the program. Hell, maybe we'll go out and try to find Randy Gregory as well, since he has yet to report to Tampa Bay Buccaneers training camp. I don't know a lot of things, but one thing I do know is you never want to skip Greg Day. I appreciate everybody for tuning in here on Recher Reacts. We'll see you tomorrow night right here.